Your first job is to be a writer. You have to think of it like that. You can't say, and don't let anybody tell you that like what you do during the day is your real job. People try to tell that to me all the time, and I usually just walk away from them, or I say something really nasty, because I think it's really rude and condescending. Your job is to be a writer. Your job is to be the best writer that you can be. I'm pretty lucky in that because I used to work in nightclubs, I have a lot of contacts from people from before I was a writer. So a lot of the DJs, a lot of the people involved in the LA scene have been my friends since I was like a teenager. So I know where to go. If I kind of see that something's getting big, I'm gonna go out a lot. Not so much anymore because I work most of the time, but I used to go out a lot, and I try to go out whenever I can. These people already have like a specific knowledge. If I try to dumb it down, I'm gonna look dumb, you know? So it's okay for a trade magazine to use the industry jargon and to use like the technical terms. You're not gonna wanna do that in a regular newspaper or anything like that, because if I'm writing about, let's say if I'm writing about a piece of equipment, and I would even be careful about using words like beats per minute, or like BPMs. I would have to write beats per minute instead of BPMs if I were writing for a commercial paper, because a lot of people aren't going to know. My mom's not going to know what a BPM is, you know? And I kind of I keep track of like everything as it goes through my head, because a lot of times you'll get ideas for the lead, like when you're in a totally inconvenient situation, like stuck in traffic. So I'll just try to like make sure that I remember it. I'll play like mind games with myself so that I remember it from when I get home, so I can write it down. The cover story for the LA Weekly, I got over, should I say it?
Yeah.
Okay, I got over $1,000 for that. So, I mean, that wasn't, there's people who get a lot more, but for me that was a lot. On average, you're gonna get like anywhere from 200 to 600 for a story, depending on the length. And also the amount of time that goes into it too. Sometimes if you're doing something on a rush, you might get more, or, but yeah, it wasn't like just over 1,000, it was quite a bit over, but I can't remember exactly what it was.
They pay less for web?
Web is definitely less, yeah. Prints, a lot. So I would say, my guess is like, it's in like the 50-cent range. Trades are usually like between 20 and I think 40. Mine's more than 20, less than 40. I don't think there are a whole lot of people that actually pay $5,000 for a story anymore. I think that's something I read about when I was a teenager that no longer exists, because I have not found them anywhere. In most cases, you have to submit your invoice. They'll give you the rate that they're going to pay, so you go and you tally up how many words you did. Like, I did 500 words at 50 cents a word, and that's whatever the math is. And then you keep track of that, and you keep track of when it comes in, and then you keep track of everything you spend, because you have to use it all to fill out your tax forms, because you're 1099. So that's another thing to do, is get like if you're going to do freelance, you have to have an accountant, because it's really hard to do on your own. I tally up everything on my own. I keep like every receipt for gas, and even drinks at bars and stuff like that. You know, if it's like if I'm covering a show and I'm meeting up with people there, you know, those are all like business expenses. So, and then just go through everything at the end of the year. I want to get one of those things that scans them and puts them in the computer, but I haven't yet. There's a lot to be said about the power of the web. From like a layout perspective, I totally prefer print. I don't like web layouts. Even like really good web layouts are all kind of, they're just not like as interesting looking to me as like print. I've seen people do really amazing stuff with print. Haven't seen a whole lot of that done with web papers. So they called me and asked me to write for them, and that was my first professional writing job. That was when I was like a senior in high school. Because it keeps you on your toes, and if you can do that, you can do pretty much anything. You don't want to have to sit idle for too long, because once you sit idle, when you're sitting idly, you just start thinking about all the things that are terrible in this world, and you get really depressed. So it's better just to keep working. I had to interview this band, and the band didn't want to come out of their trailer, And they were being like real pains about it. So the publicist is like, why don't you sneak backstage? I'm like, how am I going to sneak backstage? There's, you know, all these guards everywhere. So she got me the wristband of this guy named Famous Tony, who actually was famous, but I didn't realize it until afterwards. So she got me his wristband. I snuck in with his wristband. I did the interview. I give the wristband back to Famous Tony, and I start to go out, and I made a wrong turn. So I ended up, and then almost walked into a guard, and the guard saw I didn't have a wristband, and they kind of like, they put me in the cart, they took my driver's license, I'm like screaming at them, but I'm here to do an interview. They tried to take my tape player and my tape. They drove me all the way out to the front. They were gonna like throw me out, seriously. I'm like screaming at them the whole time, and then finally somebody says, well, she says she's a journalist, so maybe we'll just let her back in. And then they started this whole thing about how I claim to be a journalist, and I'm like, I just played you the tape of the interview, and they were just being really, it was actually kind of scary because I didn't know where they were, you know, like they just shoved me in this cart and started driving off. I'm like, you know, what are you guys doing? Nobody would tell me what was going on. They just kept on saying, you're not supposed to be here, blah, blah. I mean, I like what I do, you know?